Hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. On today's channel, I want to get today's small flock that's kind of in a training holding pattern right now in the Coop DeVille in a more permanent mobile location, if that makes any sense, and give you all some tips as to how to integrate new chickens into your setup as we go along. So come on, I think you'll find this interesting. So if you're newer to the channel, I'll introduce you to the Coop DeVille. It's kind of a mobile coop prototype that we've built several years ago. The axle is a salvaged axle off a horse trailer. All the wood, everything you see in gray is milled poplar, of course metal roof, single slope, rain catchment to fill up the water for the chickens, solar to power the Energizer that operates the electric fence, and in the wintertime to even turn on a light there to hopefully keep egg production up. If you're not familiar with the Coop DeVille, I'll link to a playlist here that details the whole build of it. This has been in rotation for several years now. It's worked out really well. There's a couple things need to be replaced. I'll talk about this ramp in a second. But the chickens that we had in there, we had about 48 chickens, I believe, at its peak in this mobile coop, which is a little bit more than should have been in there. But those chickens have aged out. They have migrated. They have migrated to eternal pastures. Trying to think of the best way to put that, but I think you guys get the gist of what's going on there. So what we had is over the wintertime, I bought a small flock, about 15 birds of what I call the most hateful birds in the world. And those are all these light-bodied birds, the Americanas, what else do we have? Ladies, what do we have? Well, most of them are Americanas, some of them are Sussex, speckled Sussex. But they're the light-bodied birds, and the reason why I don't like them is because they like to fly over everything. Even when you clip their wings, they'll still fly over the poultry netting. But Kelly loves the blue eggs, and we got to keep the blue eggs in the rotation. So these pullets got to spend the first 4 weeks of their little chick life down in our brooder, our 8x8 brooder, which is a standalone building. And it has one window, gets a little dusty, so it's not a lot of daylight in there. So they kind of grow up in a little bit of a sheltered environment for sure. They don't get to get out and get on the grass. We feed them, we water them, obviously just to protect them until they can grow up and have a little bit of ability to avoid predators. But what I did, migrating from the brooder out onto the pasture, is not the best. There needs to be an intermediary step there. So since the mobile coop was empty, we decided to put them into the mobile coop and bring the mobile coop up here in the backyard. You can see I don't have fence energizer or electric netting around here. We brought them up in the mobile coop and just keep them locked up. That's why the gates are up, the ramps are up. They have access to more space because this is bigger than an 8x8, but they're still restricted inside a container. They're yet to put toes on the ground. And obviously that's what we want to remedy now that the weather's getting better. So I picked this spot here in the backyard. A, it's convenient to the house. B, it's in a section of the yard that doesn't get a lot of sunlight, so the grass isn't the greatest. So hoping their manure at some point will supercharge that grass. And as you can see, my little fuzzy friend over there who thinks chicken turds are like Hershey Kisses, he likes to patrol this area. So even at night, he can keep the riffraff from coming in. So this is a real safe zone for the chickens to be in. So in that transition, they get used to this facility as their safe house. And that's what I want to establish as we get out here in the mobile settings. We're going to be going to different locations, different fields, different sections in the woods. And I want these chickens to know that this house is home base. This is where they come back to. This is where they roost. And you notice even their food and water is inside. I want them to think this is the place to be. And I've tested that actually because the other day I had made a mistake and left the door down, was getting something, washing out their water bucket or something, and one of the chickens got out, goes across into the garden. So I just simply go over there and start getting behind it to lead it in a way, and it immediately comes running right back over here, goes right up the ramp and back into the coop. So that's what we want. We want to have that mindset in the little chicken brain that that's what's going on there. Could you please stop eating turds and feathers while I'm talking? But now it's time to get them up in a new area there. So I'm going to bring the side-by-side around, hitch it up, and then explain some other little things in this transition. Actually, the transition from brooder to coop here that's come in handy. I wanted to take a quick second to give a shout out to the sponsor of this video, and it's Wild Badger Power Tools. And Wild Badger sent me this 4-in-1 weed eater. And if you guys follow the channel, you know obviously I'm a still guy. I like having the still products. And I do have an FS80 I use for big stuff. But I'd like having a smaller gas-powered rig around the house to do some basic yard work, something lighter for Kelly to use, and it comes in handy as well if I've got my brush blade on the still. But they sent me this 4-in-1, which makes it nice because it's not only a weed whacker, but it has a pole saw attachment or a edge trimmer or hedge trimmer, and also has a edger. As you can see here, the attachments are easy to swap out. Just a knob to turn here, a little push button, pop it out, and slide the new attachment in. It was interesting, the way the shafts go in, the shafts are pre-greased. I was really happy to see all that, so I didn't have to add grease, and went together pretty quickly. And I've always wanted an edger. I've never played around with one, and you can see here by the shape of the driveway that we haven't played around with one ever. So using the edger, discovered a whole lot more driveway than I didn't realize we had. But I'm going to put a link below in the description so you can check them out, and I appreciate them sponsoring this video. All right, let's get back to the action. So you may be wondering, why do I have a cinder block under my tongue when I have a jack wheel? Well, the wooden tongue here and the jack wheel makes the tongue twist real bad. It's kind of a design flaw. Really should go to a metal tongue and not a wooden tongue, but it is what it is for now. So since this is a small flock and will probably introduce additional chickens at some point to them, I wanted to make sure I could mark the chickens as to which was which. So you notice each chicken in there has a zip tie on their left leg. And that zip tie, before you freak out, that zip tie is loose. There's a lot of movement there, but it's just a zip tie. And that makes identification very easy. I've tried the fancy chicken bands that you can put that you get that have numbers on them, and they clip on and they're breakaway, all those things. But that's the problem. they are, some of them were cheap plastic, so their breakaway was pretty obvious. They just fall off within the first couple weeks. Get this feed so it doesn't bounce all over the place. And then the color-coded ones, they would bleach out so fast because the chickens are out in the sun, of course, so they bleach out so you don't know what the colors are. So what I'm doing now with the zip ties is simply use that as identifier. If a chicken has one zip tie on its left leg, in my little journal inside, that means they were from this flock. Next chickens I add, I may put it on the right leg, or may put 2 zip ties on the left leg. That way color doesn't really make a difference. And your chicken's legs are long, so I could get up to where I've got 2, 3, 4 zip ties on a leg. We'll get enough of them there that we can identify. We could have 6, 12 iterations that will give us all the information we need. And they're actually UV stable zip ties. You can get those at the box store, something that's made to be outside that can handle the UV better. And so even if they would bleach out, the color doesn't matter. The fact that they're zip ties means they're pretty strong. And I cut them off right at the little zip clip, so there's nothing the chicken can pull on or grab hold of to make it tighter. It'd be very, very difficult for them to tighten it up. And of course, since I have daily contact with the birds, I can see if there's something. If we start to get a little swelling or we start to see a little bulge around it, then I know, oh wow, this chicken's foot's really grown. Clip it off, put a new one on, no big deal. So that's a good way to identify. So when it comes time to age out, I'm not guessing who needs to be rotated out and taken to the great pasture in the sky. All right, let's get rolling. Let's see if I can back this thing up. So I've not had the chickens here in this spot before, any of the chickens. This is new. Well, it's not a new spot. It's not a new area. It's just a new experience for the Coop DeVille to be here. This is my old firewood pile. I'll show you on a map here so you know where we are. So we're kind of on the edge. The boar pasture's right behind me. Dan is the only one hanging out in the boar pasture right now. Merritt is in our south pasture, or our north pasture facing south. So she's hanging out there. So got electric fence on both sides. Of course, the poultry netting here, kind of make a bit of a buffer. Aerial predators, a little bit of a concern in this spot, but we'll see how it goes. But I'm going to put the poultry netting around, obviously around the mobile coop, but even around the firewood pile here. Let them get in there, scratch out some of the leaves. There's going to be all kinds of good grubs and all kinds of tasty stuff in there. And that'll help me come in and maybe straighten up our firewood pile at some point. At some point, I'd like to build an actual shelter here for firewood. But I'm going to get it unhitched. And of course, we're going to get all the electric fence and everything set up prior to opening the door to let them out. I'm going to continue to let this rest on the cinder block simply because the stress this jack is putting on my drawbar, my tongue, is a little much. And I'm going to have to replace this tongue, I believe, with either a different species of wood or just bite the bullet and make it out of metal. I actually got one made out of a piece of gas pipe that I could use, old 3-inch gas line metal. I'm trying to keep the weight down on the coop. That's the good part about being built the way it is and being able to transport it with the side-by-side up these steep hills and things. I'm also going to chalk the tires. It's flat here. I don't expect it to go anywhere, but I learned a lesson a couple weeks ago. We had a really heavy wind, and in the backyard, the wind was coming this way right into the opening, and it actually, even though it was setting up on cinder blocks and buckets, it pushed the coop back 3 feet and made it fall off all the props and everything. Scared me to death. Thought it was over the hill. So now that I'm ready to let the chickens out, I don't have to have the small feeder. I can go back to my Duncan, which is a 50-pound feeder. And when we had about 48 birds, this was 2.5 to 3 days worth of feed. So I'd only have to have that touch point that often. With, goodness, 15 birds, I think it's what, 14, 15 birds. Then obviously we should be able to triple that. I'm going to put it right up against the coop here because our storms blow in this way. So that'll just help keep the feed from getting too wet if there would be some driving wind. I'm going to stretch this fence out and see just what kind of perimeter we can make here while incorporating the wood pile into it. I think before I do that, I'm going to clear out a little bit of a path here. Just got some small saplings and some logs on the ground that can impede the path of my poultry netting. So I want to get that cleared out. So I've got my electric chainsaw. I'll just do that real quick. And I'm going to take my lav mic off so you guys don't hear me huff and puff throughout that process. All right, so I got that stretched out to be my rudimentary circle. And one little tip that I've learned is, especially on uneven ground, or if we're in a wide open pasture, not that big a deal. But here where we're dealing with slope on this side and trees on this side and length more this way, what I've discovered is if I get my rudimentary outline done with the fence, and then actually set the first pole and the last pole, go ahead and tie them together, because obviously the way this works is both ends have to meet. And then I can just go along and just stretch out more. Actually, I'm going to go this way because I don't want to be up on this slope to your guys' left. So I want to stretch that way and then just see what I can do, maybe even widen my circle here. So I'm going to start by setting these two primaries. And we'll be on the inside today. And these Premier One, of course, they come with strings. So you just give them a tie off, keep everybody happy and tight together. And we'll just go around and start setting up and tightening. And try to avoid the rocks. Now this is the 100 meters of poultry netting by Premier One. It's the 4-foot with the double prong, not the single prong fork that goes in the ground. Because of our soil type, I wanted to have twice the bite. And it's expensive, there's no doubt about it, but it is definitely worth the investment. Every other coop or chicken setup that I've had before I got this, predation was always an issue. There was always some way, somebody was finding a way under something, in something. Even if I did electric fence along the bottom, somebody figured out to get past it and not have loss. With poultry netting, haven't had hardly any loss from this. Now obviously things from above are still an issue, but this has really helped keep the ground predators out. So it's definitely worth the investment. But it is that, it is an investment. I think this is my older of the two sections. I think this is probably 4 or 5 years old now. So now that I've got this line nice and established against this bank, I don't want to go any further that way, of course. Instead of coming on around, I'm going to start back at the beginning and work my way that way. So my slack should end up here behind the coop where I have some space. I can spread out more if I need to. Okay, so as you can see, as I'm taking up my slack through my little wooded section there, I've got a lot more fence left over. So I can just get all tangled up in the branch. Just come closer to you guys. Take out all my slack. Jack. So when I built this coop, I had ramps. I have ramps on both sides, and they're supposed to be long enough to tuck up in this pocket. And my little piece of aluminum locks it in. Well, this ramp is one I've been using the most, and even though it was painted poplar, I noticed, oh goodness, probably a year ago, that on the bottom of it, because it was north facing, it was on the northern side of the coop, that I was getting mycelia growth on it. There's little mushroom, little fruiting bodies coming out. And I'm like, uh-oh. Sure enough, the end of it broke off. So that's why I have it bungeed. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the ramp on the other side. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to use the ramp on this side. And I'm going to put, instead of letting it touch the ground directly, we're going to put a piece of firewood here underneath it. Maybe offset that ground contact. And we'll let the ladies out. I don't have the electric on yet, but they can get out and start exploring. So here is my Energizer. And I've got it in what I call a little birdhouse that I made. Put my grounding rod down there for a second. On my wire. Hanging back on the hook. Yep. Helps if I would have brought a hammer. If you want to know the full details of how I did this wiring and the battery setup, the charge controller, all that, I'll link to, again, the playlist has that in it. Even though this looks like a 110 extension cord, and it is a 110 extension cord, it is carrying 12 volts. So it's Appalachian engineering, of course. So here where everybody comes together, of course, just push the tabs in. So that makes the fence circuit complete. And then I have just an alligator clip. I clip on there. And all I have to do is plug in the Energizer and we're good to go. But I'm going to go get some feed and some water for the boys, and then we'll come back and check on them. Well, I think this is going to be a good spot for them for a while. Probably leave them here for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. We'll see. We'll just see how much it gets torn up, how much rain we have. But anxious to get this spot kind of eaten down and get some chicken manure on it. So we've got some fertilizer rock in there. And then we'll be able to just start moving them around. I like to put them around the fruit trees right around June when the Japanese beetles come out, because that really helps keep the trees from getting nailed, because as the beetles come out of the ground, these guys are like little beetle assassins. So it's great to have them being able to wander around inside where the fruit trees are to take care of that when they're hatching out. So we'll make sure we time it that way. Well, I've tested the fence. Fence is hot. Good to go. I did have a little bit of a wiring issue there I had to fix. I didn't mess with putting that on camera, but extension cord laid on the ground had corroded in one spot, so I had to fix that. But should be good to go. Well, I hope you got something for some of these tips, and I thank you for coming along with me on our little chicken expedition here. And I just want to say I really, really appreciate all the comments, all the emails I get. I really feel like I've gotten to know a lot of you all, even though we may have never met face to face. There's a core of you that are just always there, always responding, always commenting, and man, I really appreciate it. That's just neat to think that through technology, being here in rural West Virginia, I can communicate with people across the world, and they feel like they know me and I feel like I know them. It's pretty cool. Well, I pray everyone have a great week. Thank you so much for watching. Y'all take care. Say goodnight, chickens.